Well, hello there, and welcome back to my channel. This is Carol King, and we're going to do some more textures. We're doing at least 20 or 20 plus, however you want to say it, textures in watercolor. And I keep coming up with more ideas and seeing different things that people use and coming up with some of my own. So it's just keeps growing. So I'm not real sure how many we'll wind up with, but this would be number 20 if we finish all four of these today. So I'm going to start with an easy one that you may not have thought of as texture, but it does really add texture even though it's lifting. And that is when you're doing your skies. I'm going to bring in my big tray so I have some different colors in here. When you're doing skies and you want to do your clouds easily, you can lift out your clouds with some different things like Kleenex or a cotton ball or Q-tips. My Kleenex, I always get the really soft stuff. This is Antwerp. I like Antwerp. So I always get the really soft stuff that it has aloe in it, so I can't use that one for lifting. So I grabbed a little toilet paper. So we'll see how that does in the place of Kleenex. But I've got to hurry up before this starts to set too much. So if I wanted to lift out some clouds, you can use Kleenex to do that and give it some shape as you go. If it didn't lift out enough, you could come with your Q-tip and roll a little bit along the area that you want some more lifted out. If you wet your Q-tip, it'll lift even more. You can also make little dots with your Q-tips like this. If you spin it, you can add little dots. I kind of like the middle that they create also. I don't know how it does it. Maybe it's the stick in the middle that's poking, but I kind of like the way that looks. If you want to use a little TP or a Kleenex, that also will lift. If you let it sit for a minute, it'll lift more. So there you go with lifting. And I don't know what I got on there that's dark, but it must have been something on my brush. Looks like we have to come back sometimes with the Kleenex one because the color ran back in. So you may have to go over that a couple times if you want it to be real white. That's kind of cool. So next we're going to do thread. I brought a bunch of thread. And I've experimented with that a couple times. And it works best if it's really wet. Doesn't seem to work very well if it's not. So I'm actually going to wind up dipping it in a little bit of water first and letting it sit for a minute. And then making sure that I have a nice puddly paint for it. Let's see what colors we want to do on this. Get something that's going to lift easily. Let's go with my favorite dark green, Paraline green. Get some more water in there. Hopefully this will lift well with this color. I don't know how well it's going to work. But I do know that I've tried it before, and if you don't get that thread on there right away, it does not work. It literally has to be down pretty quick. And then you can add paint even over it. We'll see what happens as that dries. I think pre-wetting it might have been a mistake because I saw the color move when I put it on there. Over on this side, I'm going to add a second color just to make it a little darker, and that was indigo that I added. And I'm going to put a little rope thing in here. Oh crud, my thing pulled in there. I'm going to put a little piece of rope right here, and that's going to have to be weighed down while it dries because of the shape. Let's go this way. And we'll see what happens as that dries. I think it's going to look cool. I had to put something plastic over it because if there's anything else, it's going to absorb. We can't have that. So that was string and thread. It's actually backwards, but nevertheless. Then we can do bubbles. If you mix up a little bit of paint, add just a hair of hand soap into it. Now, don't quote me on this, but don't think hand soap is acid free. So maybe do this on something that you're going to be sealing really well, like with cold wax medium or something. That's too big of a bubble. I figured out that if you don't have enough soap in there, it doesn't transfer very well. But if you get a little more soap in there, you can transfer these bubbles to your paper quite a bit easier. And then you let it dry and let it pop on its own. I'm going to suck out a little bit of the extra water right here in this corner. I have a second color. I'm not sure if I have enough soap in that either. See if that'll transfer. We'll see what happens as that dries. But that was an experiment for me. I have not done that before, but it looked really interesting. Looked pretty cool as of right now, anyway. I'm trying to absorb just a little bit of that extra, so it's not just draining down on my paper without touching the bubbles, hopefully. Okay, so if it's not transferring, extra soap. And I did use the liquid kind that bubbles already, and so maybe that wasn't concentrated enough. Perhaps if you're just using straight hand soap and not the watered down bubbly kind, it might work better. Okay, bunch saran wrap. We did the one where you lay down the saran wrap, but if you take some saran wrap and bunch it up into a ball, you can paint with it, and you can move it around and make different shapes and textures with it depending on what you're trying to do. It's almost like sponging, but just a little bit different. The texture is different, and if you want it a different way, you could elongate it perhaps. You could do it. Let's see if we can wrap it in a circle and see if that makes a difference. Let's try that. Not really. But at any rate, you can see that this is a different, completely different, not completely different, but different from sponging. Sponging is just a little bit different than this. That core green gold is a wild color. So it's really fairly yellowish. If you're going to use the sponge, you have to move it around though. If you don't move it around, you're going to just get a pattern reproduced over and over. See how the pattern? So if you're going to do it, you want to. This is the same with sponging. You want to rotate it as you go. Kind of go back and forth so that you have something different and not just a repeat pattern over and over. Well, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. We're going to let our bubbles continue to dry and see what they do. Because they kind of, over here, it just kind of turned into water. I didn't like that at all. I think I got too much paint on there. I'm doing the bubbles separately because it tends to be kind of messy. One thing I've figured out that nobody tells you in all of the tutorials that I saw is it takes pretty thick paint. You're going to need some fairly concentrated paint for this. It really doesn't work very well if there's not a little strength to the mixture. Because if it's real watery, they just pop too easily, even with my breath. While I'm trying to put it down on the paper, they're all popping before they can even sit and try to do anything. So I figured out, just trial and error, to use thicker paint and then add the soap that's already watered down that makes bubbles, that doesn't work. I tried that. It's just too watery. So you need like the gel type soap, or plain glycerin would be even better, but we don't all keep that around, and I couldn't find any, which I thought I had some, but I couldn't find it. Oh, crap. I think those little things that the kids have for making bubbles would probably be perfect for this, because it's got mixtures that are meant to create bubbles. Mind you, I'm fairly certain this wouldn't be acid free, but if you're using it for a project that you're going to be sealing with cold wax medium or something like that, I think it'd be fine. I just don't know that this is acid free when you add soap to it. I'd have to look that up, which I haven't done. Okay, so I've got my thicker mixtures. And before I bring my paper over, because like I said, this is messy, I'm going to get my bubbles done. You want to blow bubbles until they're coming off the top of the container like that. Okay, let's see what we can't do here. Okay, we're going to let that dry. Well, welcome back. They are dry. This is the bubbles that I did separately because it kind of spatters all over. Remember, you do need to have the ink fairly heavy. The watery will not work very well with these. Here's what it turned out when I tried to do it with real watered down paint. You just basically can't even see the bubbles. Barely. Here's another test run that I did that turned out pretty cool. Look at that. That is definitely a unique effect. I like it. And then this right here was saran wrap. Let's take this string off and see what the thread did. Well, that's pretty neat. And then here's where I laid the rope down. And Q-tips and a cotton ball and Kleenex or toilet paper. So those are this week's textures. And I've got at least one more set of 4 I think I've got planned for next week. So enjoy adding these textures to your paintings. This could be a rock wall or pebbles in the beach if you use the right colors, obviously. This could be bushes or brush or anything really. I'm not sure what I would use that for, but I like the way it looks. At any rate, enjoy yourself in testing out these methods. And as always, please like and subscribe. When you like it or comment, it will boost the views so that more people can see it. And when you subscribe, of course, it'll let you know when the next one comes up. So it was good painting with y'all. And as always, keep painting.